The Impossibility stack, coincidences that don't behave. Start with the eclipse trick. Right now, the sun sits about 400 times farther away than the moon, and about 400 times larger in diameter, so the disks nearly match. Astronomers will tell you it's timing, not destiny. As the moon drifts away about 4 centimeters each year, totalities will shorten and eventually vanish. Still, for a species that builds meaning out of alignment, the sight feels like a signature. The sober mind says transient geometry, the gut says emblem. Meanwhile, the locked face turns the sky into a stage. Tidal locking is common. NASA points out that most large moons keep one side toward their planets, but the effect on story is singular. One hemisphere becomes the canvas for every myth, every nursery rhyme, every omen pinned to an unblinking mask, while the far side hoards its own history. Physics explains the pose. Culture reads the pose as a pointer. Then the near, far mismatch pipes up. The side we see wears dark Maria, seas of basalt, while the far side is thick-crusted and bright. At the center of mass, pulled roughly 2 kilometers toward Earth. In the lab, the models say early heating, crustal thickness, and tidal effects did the sculpting. In the mood that hunts intention, the asymmetry looks like weight on the Earth-facing side and armor on the back. Mascons fit into the stack like coins under a rug. GRAIL mapped strong positive anomalies beneath basins such as Imbrium and Serenitatis, and mission teams learned the hard way that most low lunar orbits are unstable unless you fly frozen inclinations near 27 degrees, 50 degrees, 76 degrees, and 86 degrees. Engineers call this lumpy gravity and difficult housekeeping. The intent-hunting mind calls it a road network, lanes that work, lanes that don't, as if someone cared which paths stayed open. Oceanus Procellarum refuses to cooperate with a simple pattern. Its vast, dark, and different gravity gradients and topography suggest an ancient, rift province rather than a single impact basin, which is why it lacks the positive anomaly neighbors wear. The mainstream read is complex geology. The stack builder hears exception, and exceptions attract speculation like a magnet under sand drawing filings into lines. Here's where geometry teases the eye. Straight rills are rare but real. Wrinkle ridges trace long, patient arcs. In high-resolution mosaics, some stretches flirt with rectilinear patterns, orthogonal hints in the Procellarum region that scientists discuss as frozen tectonics. That's enough to seed a thought. Grids belong to both nature and design. The honest line is this: orthogonality doesn't prove planning. It merely refuses to rule it out on sight. Scale joins the chorus. Among planetary moons, ours is unusually large relative to its primary, which is why people sometimes call the Earth moon pair a double planet. The favored origin story, giant impact and molten coalescence, handles the chemistry and momentum well. Still, unusual is a word storytellers don't leave alone. Unusual mass, perfect-ish eclipses, permanent face, 3 beats make a rhythm. Biology adds a softer drum. A lunar month of 29.5 days sits near human cycles without snapping to a tooth. Studies wrestle over full moon effects on sleep and behavior. Results split, confounds abound. Yet, talk to ER nurses and beat cops and you get the same raised eyebrow. Busier, stranger. Science wants clean signal. Life often runs on nuisance amplitude. Control, if it exists, wouldn't shove, it would lean. Now lay culture over the rock. Eclipses are ritual magnets. Calendars in multiple faiths anchor feasts to crescents and fullness. Stories hang faces on the Maria, man-rabbit watcher. Symbols aren't side effects, they're handles. If you wanted a lever, you'd build it from whatever a species can't stop staring at. The moon is a free billboard that arrives on schedule. Pause here for the counterweight. Every brick in this stack has a mainstream explanation. Eclipses are temporary alignment, locking is tidal dissipation. Mascons are dense basalt plus boundary uplift. Procellarium's weirdness is rifting. Straightish features can be tectonics or cooling fractures. Human cycles are messy and culture is sticky. Take each alone, and the case for intention dissolves. But people don't live one fact at a time. We experience the silhouette cast by many true things standing together. That's where probability and psychology cross wires. A pile of independent, natural processes can feel arranged when they rhyme. Casinos and cults both exploit that human bug. So the question turns, not is any piece impossible, but why does the whole picture feel like a pattern we're meant to notice? Meanwhile, there's the ringing. Apollo's seismometers heard long, clean decays in dry rock, solid geophysics, uncomfortable metaphor. Bell implies cavity, cavity implies design. The right correction is simple. Ringing can come from structure without hollowness. Yet metaphors travel farther than caveats. A phrase becomes a beat in the stack, and beats accumulate until a mind hears music. Here's the honest position. The impossibility stack is an aesthetic, not a proof. It's how alignments, asymmetries, lanes, and stories land when you put them side by side. Scientists are right to cleave to mechanism. Believers are right that mechanism can still be theater. The danger lives at the edges. Declare design, and you stop asking. Declare accident, and you stop listening. The stack is a prompt, not a verdict. And while the prompt hums, the face keeps facing, the tides keep breathing, and the eclipses keep marking time. Perfect for now, imperfect by design. The control hypothesis, John Lear, and the soul trap. Here's where the ground we've been walking, seismic traces, gravity quilts, orbital lanes, tilts into something many people only say in whispers. John Lear steps into the frame. Former airline captain, conspiracy circuit regular, and the loudest voice for a stark idea. That what we call reincarnation isn't a gentle wheel but a managed loop, and the moon is part of the routing. Stakes first. If Lear's wrong, this is folklore stapled to physics. If he's right, then the most intimate act in a human life, the exit, happens inside a funnel with a script and a reset button. That lands in hospital rooms, at kitchen tables, and inside the way we teach courage to our kids. The consequence isn't a thought experiment, it's how you meet the light. On paper, Lear stitches together things that don't share a lab bench. Near-death accounts with bright tunnels and persuasive presences. Gnostic alarms about administrators, archons, who harvest attention. Tibetan bardo instructions warning that visions arise after. Death, peaceful and wrathful, and that clinging to any of them binds you. Then he points up. The moon is always there, the most reliable signal in our sky. In his telling, it isn't scenery. It's interface. Let's mark the line clearly. None of this appears in Apollo telemetry, GRAIL gravity releases, or NASA's tidal locking pages. Those are measurements. Lear's claim lives in testimony, tradition, and pattern reading. We'll hold him to that lane and keep our facts straight. The moon rings long because it's dry and fractured. Mascons under basins bend orbits for geological reasons. Frozen inclinations are a lumpy field solution, not proof of lanes laid by design. So why does this hypothesis grip people anyway? Because it marries two truths: spectacle persuades and timing rules behavior. Look at how we're built. We move toward light. We crave reunion. We pick the path of least resistance when we're shocked. If you wanted to manage a population at scale, you'd leverage those reflexes with a simple kit. A bright attractor, a familiar face, a narrative that frames return as duty. Lear argues the kit already exists as a cultural default, and the moon lends it a brand. Constant face, monthly rhythm, eclipses that stamp a logo onto noon. Meanwhile, the declassified side supplies scenery without confirmation. Stargate's remote viewers drew verticals, voids, man-made impressions on lunar cues. We can't validate those sessions against farside ground truth. An analytic overlay is a real hazard. Minds snap impressions into known shapes. Still, the pages exist. They're not proof. They're set dressing that makes Lear's claim easier to imagine. Counterweight matters here. Neuroscience and psychology offer cleaner frames for much of this. Tunnel vision and presences in near-death experiences can track with hypoxia and temporal lobe activity. Life reviews might be brain-driven narrative stitching. Culture trains expectation, and expectation paints what the mind sees when it's under load. You don't need a device on the moon to explain why many people meet light with relief and choose a familiar road. And yet, people keep reporting refusals. Not defiance, clarity. It felt like a pitch, they say. I waited. That's where the control hypothesis behaves less like cosmology and more like an ethics class. If a choice arrives wrapped in spectacle, do you trust it? If consent is constructed by timing and mood, is it consent? The practical fallout shows up in small, human scripts. Hospice workers who've never heard of Lear quietly coach autonomy. You can pause. Meditation teachers fold bardo pointers into breath work. If a vision appears, recognize it and let it pass. Families write notes that say, if there's a tunnel, take your time. That's not conspiracy. That's agency practice. Get this, Lear's mechanics mirror earthly control. Capture attention with a bright thing. Offer a one-click path. Compress time so deliberation feels dangerous. We know that pattern from ads, screens, and cults. The claim says the pattern scales. Whether or not it does, the defense scales too. Train the pause, distrust the pitch, strengthen memory so you're harder to reset. Here's the honest position we're holding. The control hypothesis is not supported by the seismic, gravity, or orbital data we've cited. It is supported by stories, traditions, and a psychological model of persuasion. If you keep it in that register, it becomes useful even if untrue, a rehearsal for choice under pressure. And if it happens to be true, then the smallest move is still the strongest. When the room goes thin and the invitation arrives, bright, familiar, urgent, you have a breath. Use it. Classified echoes, remote viewing, signals, and sealed results. Unknown to the teams trading notes on Mascons and moonquakes, another set of rooms was listening for a different kind of echo. The instructions were simple on paper: hold a coordinate, report impressions. The unit would later be known as Stargate. Most targets were warehouses, airfields, ship slips, things you can check. A handful weren't. Some cues pointed at the moon. Stakes first. If even one blind session captured structure that maps to known topography without prior exposure, then the line between instrument and intuition blurs. And if that line blurs, the moon's backstage stops being only myth. But the sober constraint holds. Lunar cues are notoriously hard to validate. We don't have walkthroughs on the far side. Remote viewing's own manuals warn about analytic overlay, the brain's urge to snap raw impressions into familiar shapes. A line becomes a beam, a hollow becomes a hull. That hazard doesn't disqualify, it demands caution. Action lives in the transcripts. You can read them now, declassified and scanned, session numbers inked in the margins. A monitor feeds coordinates, the viewer breathes in sketches, verticals, man-made, cool interior, repeating members, void, tunnel. Another page shows a tall, narrow, tower-like impression near a rim. None of this proves hardware on the moon. It proves a consistent tendency. When minds aim at vacuum and rock, they return with architecture. Is that signal or overlay? The honest answer is both show up, and the work is separating them without cheating. Meanwhile, the conventional record kept tightening its map. GRAIL's twin spacecraft flew formation and measured minuscule Doppler shifts, turning the gravity field into a quilt at degree 900 and beyond. Positive anomalies matched basalt-flooded basins like Imbrium and Serenitatis. Oceanus Procellarum remained the outlier, likely an ancient rift province rather than a single impact basin. Mission planners penciled frozen inclinations near 27 degrees, 50 degrees, 76 degrees, and 86 degrees because most low orbits misbehaved elsewhere. None of that speaks to towers. It speaks to density contrasts, boundary uplift, and predictable headaches. Still, hold a viewer's ribbed sketch next to a gravity map and you feel a tug. Scenery without proof, math without story. Signals added a thinner thread. In downlink archives, engineers occasionally flagged narrowband squeals, short carriers that held for seconds, then cut clean, most often dismissed as radio frequency interference. That's the right first call. Space is noisy. Ground stations live in real spectra with neighbors. The responsible path is spectrum plots, cross-station checks, and boring memos. In a few logs, text did exactly that and still couldn't pin the origin. Those entries don't prove transmitters on the moon. They prove repetition where randomness should dominate, and they prove good habits. Tag, compare, move on. Here's where bureaucracy enters with a hush, and we're going to draw a bright line. There are internal categories that route anomalies to specialist desks. Some engineers colloquially bundle oddities under broad umbrellas: space weather, interference, out-of-family signatures. We do not have verified public directives establishing a formal non-terrestrial interference program with annexes and secret routing lists. If you've heard acronyms like NTI framed as standing policy, treat them as allegation unless accompanied by citable documents. The careful phrasing is this: organizations use catch-all labels to manage noise. The labels aren't evidence of extraterrestrial anything. Impact lands in two places. Inside the programs, lunar remote view targets served as stress tests. Can a viewer cue to a place nobody in the room has seen? Results were mixed, as you'd expect. Some specific, some mush, some clearly overlaid. Outside, those same pages, sketches of ribs, voids, man-made scribbled in the corner, become fuel for a culture hungry for backstage. The mind loves a set. The moon's far side makes a perfect one. Meanwhile, rumor keeps trying to fill gaps that documents leave. An engineer remembers a 7-second tone that reappeared across lunations. A comms operator in another hemisphere remembers a line that rode a pass over a basin rim. None of these anecdotes passes the bar on its own. Together, they illustrate selection bias and memory's warmth. That doesn't make them worthless, it makes them fragile. Serious people keep copies, build comparisons, and avoid conclusions that outrun data. Here's the pivot that keeps the story honest. Remote viewing's own best practice is humility. Report sensory primitives, temperature, texture, form, before naming. When viewers stick to primitives, lunar sessions tend to return large, open, cold, vertical. Words that could describe lava tubes and rim walls as easily as halls. High-resolution imaging from Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter shows skylights leading into vast tubes formed by flowing basalt. Straight segments appear in nature. Rectilinear hints in Procellarum likely mark frozen tectonics, not trusses. Orthogonality, by itself, isn't a smoking gun. In the aftermath, what remains is a braid, declassified sketches that lean architectural, gravity maps that lean geological, signal logs that lean mundane with a few stubborn outliers, and a public use to headlines about bells and masks. The sealed pieces, the unshared annexes, the redacted lines, invite stories. The temptation is to promote invitation to evidence. Resist it. The stronger play is harder. Keep the uncertainty visible, keep the measurements clean, and let the questions breathe without turning them into claims. And yet, something still hums at the edge. Not proof, a prickle. The sense that even if there's nothing built up there, our need to imagine rooms and shadow says something true about us. We're pattern hunters standing under a patient face. The discipline is simple and rare. Ask, test, file, and refuse to choose comfort, neither denial nor fantasy, over the plain work of looking. Machine fingerprints, seams, mascons, and acoustic weirdness. If you're hunting for intention in stone, you start where gravity misbehaves. Mascons, those mass concentrations GRAIL sharpened to breathtaking detail, sit like heavy coins beneath circular basins. Imbrium, Serenitatis, Crisium. The mainstream read is solid. Denser mare basalts and uplift at the crust, mantle boundary raise the local field. Mission planners don't debate the why when a low orbit starts sliding. They correct and file the model update. But stand in the believer's shoes for 1 minute, and those same highs look like reinforcement beneath rings, ballast tucked under scars. Let's hold both frames without cheating. The maps show no single, global symmetry a machine would love. They show a modeled quilt, natural and specific. Oceanus Procellarum is the outlier, vast and dark but lacking the big positive anomaly neighbors wear. Geophysicists point to Procellarium's likely rift origin, an ancient, tectonic province instead of one clean impact. That's consistent with gravity gradients and topography. Still, exception is narrative catnip. A pattern of highs under circles, then one enormous sea that refuses the rule, invites story. Either the plumbing was different or the panel is different. Zoom in, and another itch starts. Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter's mosaics reveal long wrinkle ridges and sinuous rills draped across the Maria. Volcanic channels and cooling stresses explain their curves. Tectonic relaxation explains their patient, shallow relief. Yet some segments flirt with orthogonality. Near rectilinear hints discussed in papers as fossil rift geometry in Procellarum. Nature does straight, rarely. That's enough to seed a thought and snatch it back. Grids belong to both geology and design. Orthogonality doesn't certify intent. It only refuses to rule it out by sight alone. Now tap the glass where sound lives. When SIVB stages slammed in, the Apollo seismometers recorded long, clean decays. Dry, fractured rock with low intrinsic attenuation lets energy ricochet, scatter, and bleed slowly. That's the sober mechanics. The metaphor bell gong did its own work. Bell implies cavity. Cavity implies chamber. Chamber tempts intent. The correction matters. You can get ringing from structure without hollowness. Layering, fractures, and lithospheric stiffness can sustain tails. Even so, the duration startled the teams that had Earth's damp planet in their bones. Surprise is a kind of fingerprint too, even when you can model it later. Orbits carry their own telltales. Most low lunar paths decay unless you ride a handful of frozen inclinations near 27 degrees, 50 degrees, 76 degrees, and 86 degrees. Engineers call this the practical face of a lumpy field. Conspiracy readers call them lanes, as if pathways were designed. The truth that keeps you honest cuts down the middle. Frozen inclinations fall out of spherical harmonics, not blueprints. But lanes, intended or not, shape behavior. They concentrate traffic, cluster anomalies, and give pattern-hungry minds rails to point at. Then there's the 2-kilometer offset. The moon's center of mass pulled toward Earth relative to its geometric center. That skew, plus a thinner near-side crust, tracks with early heating and near-side mare flooding. To a geophysicist, it's thermal history. To a machine hunter, it reads like weight on the face we see. The responsibility here is to say both, then privilege the measured mechanism. The moment you let metaphor outrun math, you're lost. Get this, lava tubes are real. Skylights at the Maria, some tubes could span kilometers. Cooling and drainage make ribbed interiors nature can carve without a single beam. That matters because cathedral ribs, in remote view sketches, sound dramatic until you run a rover past basaltic arches. The honest play is to measure spacing, curvature, variance, then publish numbers, not adjectives. Straight is rare, not forbidden. Signals at a thin, tempting thread. Techs have logged narrow carriers during some passes, then filed them as likely interference when cross-station checks failed to replicate. That's good hygiene. A few entries stay stubborn, short holds that cut clean, timings that rhyme with basin rims. They're not proof of transmitters. They're invitations to replicate with discipline. One hit is weather. 3 aligned with geography starts to ask for a plan. Meanwhile, gravity fields to degree 900 and beyond, GL 090D, GRGM 900C, give mission teams predictive power. You can fly close now if you respect the quilt. That predictability is not conspiracy, it's competence. But predictability itself wears a mask at night. Lanes feel like permissions, stable trims feel like rails, and rails read like someone wants you here and not there. Here's the balance beam we refuse to fall off. Machine fingerprints, if they exist, won't arrive as smoking guns. They'll look like smudges that survive cleaning, Mascons under circles, an outlier sea with different bones, long. Seams that run straighter than comfort but past geological muster. A body that hums longer than our damp world, and corridors where orbits behave. Each smudge is deniable. Together, they feel like a thumb you almost recognize, until the math taps your shoulder and reminds you why the smudge is there. The program, who, when, and the directive nobody can explain. While engineers mapped Mascons and seismometers traced long decays, another story threaded through offices where fluorescent lights hummed and memos slept in manila folders. It features ordinary names with ordinary badges, flight dynamics analysts, tracking station leads, procurement clerks, people who had keys to both the sky and the basement. The era spans late Apollo into the long quiet after, 197s through the 199s, when lunar hardware was mothballed but lunar questions weren't. The timing matters. After Apollo, budgets slid earthward, yet 2 currents ran under the surface. One was strict physics, retroreflector ranging, orbital perturbations, clean work. The other was curiosity with a clearance stamp. That's where mission shops and intel desks brushed sleeves. Not in mission patches, but at lunch tables and in quiet, "Can you look at this?" handoffs across town. Inside that culture, engineers did what engineers do. Build buckets for outliers so routine isn't wrecked by noise. Anomalies got filed under broad umbrellas, space, weather, interference, out-of-family signatures. Labels meant to protect missions, not to ignite lore. You'll hear people speak of catch-alls with crisp acronyms. Treat them carefully. We don't have verified public directives establishing a formal non-terrestrial interference policy with annexes and secret routing lists. The safe, honest phrasing is this: organizations use category codes to route the odd. Codes aren't evidence of extraterrestrial anything. Stakes first. If these umbrellas are just housekeeping, you yawn and move on. If they're drawers where the inexplicable goes to sleep, then the bureaucracy built a habit of moving discomfort out of sight. Either way, the existence of catch-alls shapes behavior. People drop things into them and stop asking. That's how humans keep schedules, and it's how questions go quiet without a villain in sight. Action hides in micro-stories, the kind that fit on a sticky note. A flight dynamics team sees a tracking glint that doesn't match catalog debris, tags it under the umbrella, and gets a polite "received" with no follow-up. A comms tech hears a narrowband squeal during a pass over Mare Imbrium, does the right thing, checks spectra, cross stations, and when replication fails, files it as likely interference. A procurement specialist, one of those quiet professionals who move money between line items without fanfare, Receives new language to add to a support contract. Vendor shall retain anomaly logs per standard annex. She asks what the annex covers. The answer is simple: all non-nominal spectral events. Boring words, tidy edges. Meanwhile, the public-facing prose stays calm. NASA explains tidal locking without flourish, notes the moon's drift at roughly 4 centimeters a year, and shows how most large moons keep one face toward their planets. No mystery there. But inside the loop, mystery persists because labels domesticate unease. Put a sticker on the file, and the file stops shouting. What nobody knew at the time, because nobody announces drawers, was how those quiet labels ripple. They create a norm. If your spectrum plot looks odd, you tuck it under the umbrella. If your Doppler residuals bump a basin rim, you write gravity field, not what is that. The habit keeps consoles calm. It also trims curiosity at the edges. Names? You won't find astronauts on podiums reading policy about anomaly routing. You will find meeting minutes where initials sign off on revisions, people who later moved on to Earth observation programs or retired to teach. None of them wears a cape. That's the part few want to hear. Systems can hide things without malice. Tidiness can do the job of secrecy without anyone twirling a mustache. Let's be explicit about the caution line. You'll hear stories that dress housekeeping in intrigue, 3 letters that sound like code words, annexes that can't be pulled, distribution lists with masked titles. Unless there's a citable document, treat those as allegation, not evidence. The responsible posture is skepticism both ways. Skeptical of fantasy, skeptical of the impulse to sand weird edges smooth until they vanish. The work is to keep the file open without writing a plot on top of it. Meanwhile, rumor travels the way rumor does. Half overheard in cafeterias, then retrofitted to worldviews. Remote viewers who once sketched verticals hear about catch-alls and imagine nets catching glimpses. Navigators hum a remembered 7-second tone and wonder which drawer it landed in. A comms operator in Madrid raises an eyebrow when a received comes back too quickly. None of this proves anything beyond a mood, that the machine of procedure handles the anomalous with the same quiet efficiency it handles everything else. Here's where it lands for us. The program, capital P, wasn't one office. It was a culture shaped by tools, seismometers, gradiometers, spectrum analyzers, and category codes that tell people where to put things that don't fit. Who? Engineers, analysts, project officers, procurement clerks. When? After the ringing, before archives lived on phones. And the directive nobody can explain? It's usually a label doing its job. Read it as housekeeping, and you sleep well. Read it as a breadcrumb, and you keep walking. Either way, the door is there, a drawer for the odd, a habit for the strange. The moon, unblinking, keeps its face turned toward the office where the key might be. And the people inside, tired, competent, cautious, keep missions safe while the questions they file continue to hum softly in the cabinet, waiting for someone with time and manners to open them without writing fiction on the label.